Story 1. My mother homeschooled me in elementary school by handing me textbooks in September and telling me to finish them by June. In 5th grade, I got fed up with the 200-plus question problem sets and simply stopped doing math. She asked to review my work around May, and when she realized I hadn't been doing it, grounded me by removing and locking up everything from my room except a week of clothes, a Bible, and a blanket to sleep with. It was successful in that she continued to punish me by enrolling me in public school for the next year. Going to actual school and getting socialized properly is the only reason I'm remotely okay today. Story 2. My dad spanked me once for stealing something from another kid's bag in the cloakroom at UK school. I was also grounded for 2 weeks. That lasted a few days until he was then informed by the teacher she was in fact wrong and had believed the word of another student who was in fact then caught red-handed doing it again when they blamed me for it and had told my parents she caught me. I had professed my innocence and was ignored. That was pretty much the last time I was spanked unless he personally caught me, and I don't think my mom ever did again. I remember her telling me she felt horrible because they realized not only couldn't they take it back, but that I no longer had any reason to tell them the truth, because even if I did, they wouldn't believe me. I guess my message here is, don't act on what others tell you just because they're an adult and a kid is a kid. Story 3. My parents used a reverse drastic measure. They told me for every nearly perfect score on a test, they would let me skip school for a day. I started getting really good grades, but I also ended up being bored at home because I liked learning things and missed my friends at school. So, I didn't really end up using my sick days a lot and got really good grades. Story 4. I think it was here on Reddit where a couple had a son who, in 5th grade, was bullying a classmate from a poverty-stricken home about his clothes and that he got free lunch. Their son was doing things like cutting more holes in the boys' shirts and throwing his lunch on the floor, in addition to destroying his schoolwork that he did get done. Their son was always turning punishments around on the boy, saying things like, "I lost my Game Boy because of you." When they got yet another call from the school, she called her husband at work and said, "Okay, it's time." Her husband left work early, and they stripped his room and took all his 5th grade clothes. They got out the 4th grade clothes that they were going to donate to a thrift store, and he had to wear them to school wrinkled until he learned his lesson. They also did things like order pizza from his favorite place and not let him eat any of it. He was fed, just not allowed to eat that. If I remember correctly, they took his belongings to a nearby grandparents' house until they felt he had learned his lesson. Took a few days, but eventually he did figure out that they meant business. Story 5. My son, who is now 22, went through a rough patch around the age of 14. He was spending time with the wrong crowd, trying to be cool, and so on. He got suspended from school for a week. I got permission from my work for him to come with me as a volunteer for the entire week. He worked very hard, but was also rewarded by participating in the resident activities. He got to hold 2 parrots and watch them put on a show, among other things. He never got suspended again. He tells me now that it was a great idea because he didn't get to relax and enjoy himself like his friends. He had to work harder than he would have in school, but still ended up with some great memories with me, even though he was upset at the time. Story 6. I never really did anything drastic with either of my kids, but my parents were really into drastic measures. They once left me at home alone to punish me for not wanting to go to school and took my sister to Disneyland for 3 days. They sent my grandma over eventually to collect me from the empty house. 8-year-old me never got over that. There is a clear difference between how I saw my parents before that debacle and after. Not to mention the only reason I didn't want to go was because my undiagnosed bad vision was giving me headaches that made me puke. It wasn't even me misbehaving. I was scared. Story 7. My parents canceled cable 1980s when my brother was doing poorly in school. The thing is, he didn't watch a lot of TV. I did. They also took the power cord for our Nintendo Entertainment System. Again, he didn't play it. I don't know if they got us confused or just thought, the darn TV is always on, it's got to be the reason. Story 8. I had attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and undiagnosed autism. Undiagnosed in the way that I wasn't officially diagnosed, but my mother knew for a fact as she worked with disabled children. I was given 0 support in school, which eventually led to me failing almost every class throughout the years. My dad was ex-Air Force and the punishments were very along those lines. beaten, cleaned the entire shared bathroom with a toothbrush, got my door taken, got my bed taken, you name it. When I would have a meltdown, they'd hold me down and cover my mouth to keep me quiet so the neighbors can't hear. They cannot understand why I hate being touched, why I always lock my door, why I'm a neat freak, and why I have zero self-esteem. Punishment shouldn't make your kid afraid of you. If that happens, you failed as a parent. Story 9. My parents broke my things when they were mad at me, or broke things near them and took my allowance to pay for it. My mom smashed 2 collectible piggy banks I had. One was hand-painted and brought back from a vacation specifically for me. 12-year-old me tried to glue them back together with wood glue. Later, she smashed one of my absolute favorite belongings, a metal turtle lamp with a frosted amber glass shell. I loved turtles as a kid and saw one of the lamps in a store and begged for it for months. Got it for my birthday. When this one broke, I didn't bother trying to glue it back together. I thought this was a normal thing to do until I read something online about it not being normal and turned to my husband and asked if his parents ever did that to him. He looked at me in horror. If you can't regulate your emotions and rage around your kids, then how do you expect them to learn how to do the same? Story 10. I am an instructor at a trade school. No children of my own, but I work with young adults every day. I recently had to put a student on academic probation because they lined up a bunch of empty bottles in the hallway and played bowling with a mannequin head. I have never laughed so hard in my life, but unfortunately, the school's director was witness to the mannequin bowling, and I had to punish the student. She is doing fine in class, and I know she will graduate, but if you are going to do funny things, at least make sure no one is watching. Story 11. My son would not or could not stop skipping school. We told him if he ditched class again, we were pulling him out, and he could get his general educational development when he was ready for it. He ditched again and again, and we didn't do it. Then finally, for the last time he got caught, we pulled him out, and he cried and cried in the principal's office, begging us, please don't do it, and to give him another chance. He was 17. He got a job, got his general educational development, and realized his circle of friends was not good for him. College, degree, pharmacy, married 10 years, and thanking us we did what we did. Would we do it again? Yes, even though it was so painful at the time. Story 12. No, I was sent away to military school at the age of 12. I swore I would never do anything like that to my kids. There is a way to get the message through without messing them up for the rest of their lives. Story 13. My son was a huge reader, to the detriment of everything else. I ended up taking his books away until he finished his work and got himself back on track. I felt like the worst mom ever. Who takes their kids' books away? But I knew that would hit him the hardest, and it worked. Story 14. Absolutely. I grounded my kid for lying about their grades, and it turned into a real eye-opener for both of us. Now we have a better line of communication. Story 15. My parents were not usually the type to take extreme measures, but one time when I was in middle school, my grades started tanking because I got super into online gaming. They gave me a few warnings, but I did not really take it seriously. One weekend, while I was at a friend's house, they went through my room and confiscated my entire gaming setup. Console, controllers, everything. I came home to find nothing but an empty desk where my setup used to be. I was furious at the time, but I will admit it worked. My grades improved, and they gave me my stuff back after a month. Looking back, it was harsh, but it gave me a real wake-up call. Story 16. My parents yelled at me a lot and punished me for my grades. Turns out that doesn't actually help. I failed out of college and had a breakdown because of how much I had tied my personal worth to my grades. The one thing that did help with my grades was when my parents offered a reward for good grades instead of punishments for bad ones. Story 17. In my freshman year of high school, I had an English teacher who was known by both students and staff for being unreasonably strict and unforgiving with grading. Think taking off a point in a Shakespeare memorization exercise for writing A instead of the another for missing a comma, and so on. I don't think she had any students get anything above a B on report cards, and even that was rare. I know this because she proudly announced it during her introduction on the first day of school. I brought home either a D or an F, can't remember which, and my dad built a massive wooden crate and put every single thing I owned, except for pillows, blankets, clothes, and my childhood stuffed animal inside. He locked it and told me I would get my things back when I brought home a C or higher. I was also grounded, which included no television, no computer, no seeing friends whether at their house or mine, and no listening to music. I think I got some very limited time to call my best friend and my boyfriend. I wasn't allowed any books outside of what I needed for school. Mind you, I was always mostly a straight-A student with the occasional B, and English was my strongest subject. I turned in every assignment I studied, I put everything I had into that class, and it made no difference. I barely managed to pull my grade up high enough on my last report card. If I hadn't, it was going to continue through summer and the first quarter of the next school year. In the end, I had nothing and no one for 3/4 of the school year. Afterward, my dad kept the box in the garage and liked to remind me periodically that he would be happy to use it again if needed. Story 18. Yes, I had to take a pretty drastic step once. My teenager was consistently failing to complete homework and was becoming more and more distracted by video games. After several warnings, I decided to take away all gaming devices for an entire month. The first week was rough, with lots of arguments and frustration, but as time went on, I noticed a positive change. My child started focusing more on schoolwork, grades improved, and we even had more family time together. It was tough but worth it in the end. Sometimes, setting firm boundaries is necessary to help them get back on track. Story 19. My dad called me D for an entire semester in high school because I got a D in algebra on my report card. So I do not recommend doing that. My daughter also struggles in math, so we just let her know that as long as she tries, that is all that matters. We help her with understanding math concepts in her homework and work with her teacher if she needs extra support. Story 20. I probably tried. I raised kids with developmental issues. Luckily, they taught me that when they got cranky and uncooperative, they had grown, and I had missed it. When I gave them more responsibility, they got happier with more confidence. By the time they were 15, they could run the house. Story 21. Late to this party, but my kid did not care if you took away his stuff when he got in trouble. He just did not care. He would find other entertainment with basically nothing. So instead of taking stuff anytime he got in trouble, we would schedule a family trip to the food bank for 2 to 3 hours of packing food for those less fortunate. He has not gotten in trouble at school for the last year and a half, so I would say it is working. Story 22. I got punished for having undiagnosed attention deficit/hyperactivity disorder. Didn't empty the dishwasher? Grounded. Didn't do homework? Grounded. Got poor grades? Grounded. Between constantly being grounded for stuff like this, I was extremely socially anxious and shy. My parents could never understand why I didn't have friends. I would cry every night in middle school because I wanted friends and had a tough time making them already. I knew on top of that, I could almost never hang out with them because I was literally always grounded. I was not a bad kid. I was the quiet girl who avoided attention at all costs. They still can't understand why I am 33 and introverted still. Story 23. I have 4 kids. 1 in high school, 1 in middle school, and 2 in elementary. I'm very lucky that they are bright and disciplined, so I don't have to do much, but you absolutely have to stay on them. Review homework, help with test preparation, make sure they understand the topics, and so on. You should not ever let it get to the point where drastic measures are needed. It takes less effort to help them along than to correct course when they are struggling. If you have to resort to drastic punishment, the ball was dropped a while ago. Story 24. My parents left me on the curb at the age of 3 for not getting into the car. Honestly, most of my adult life has reflected this exploitation of the power dynamic, both inside and outside of the family. Story 25. My father threatened to send me to military school to straighten me out until he realized I was excited about the possibility. After reading more of the comments, I just wanted to add that tough love acts always backfire. Always. Story 26. Anytime I got a grade below a C+, I was grounded for the entire marking period following the report card. Lots of nights of being forced to sit at the dining room table with my father getting drunker and angrier when I didn't understand something, usually math. Fast forward 30 years later, diagnosed with attention deficit disorder and dyscalculia. Story 27. When I was maybe 9 years old, my mother and stepfather punished me for making fun of another kid's haircut by dragging me into the bathroom shower and cutting my hair rather drastically. They left one long piece in the back, more like a rat tail than a mullet, and asked me if I wanted to keep it. It made my stupidly bad new haircut look even more ridiculous, so I said to cut it off. I'm 61 now and absolutely hate getting my hair done, but I do it once a year or so. Obviously, I've never had fashionable hair,